Hello there. Today we're going to talk about this ink. Now you can't really see which ink it is because all of these Diamine bottles look the same, but it is in fact Diamine Twilight. During my last appearance at the FP Geeks radio, fountain pen radio, I made a short list of inks that I thought would make interesting candidates for the Inkcyclopedia, and Demoskratin, the people rule, and one ink was selected. That was Gerban Lidete. We've done that, and then this one was a runner-up, and it was a runner-up. I think it actually got 1 vote, but the other one only got 5, so it's not that bad. I think this makes for a very nice blue ink. It's a quite dark blue. It's not a very sparkling and intense blue in that regard. It's a bit dark, but it's really nicely shaded, and it's not called Twilight without a reason. It's really, I think, the color of the sky. I just combine words. It's more efficient. It's the color of the sky. Well, anyway, it's the color of the sky during twilight. So it's a pretty dark blue that runs from fairly dark to something that's almost black. But it's not just a dark blue. It's almost grayish in some aspects. So I really like that. I think it's a very fascinating ink. It has pretty good properties, flows well. I got it to feather, but it took me quite a bit of effort. You will see that later on. So yeah, I really like it, and I think you should at least see what this ink is like. So I hope that's going to be interesting. Let's move on to the writing sample, and I hope it's useful. Bye-bye. Okay, so here we go with Diamine Twilight. Let's start by just going through the different nib sizes. Here we have an F. To me, I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but to me this is a fairly light blue that every now and then shades a little bit to some darker blue, but that's pretty much it. Let's have a look at a medium nib. Note how my T's change with the pen. The blue seems a bit more intense here, a bit more saturated. Then we have a B nib. Now we get a very dark blue. Whoops. Lazy dog. And finally we have the italic. So here too we have this very dark blue, but I think you can also see some of the gray in there. When we're talking about colors, let's do a bit of a swab test-ish thing with the 6mm Pilot Parallel. I do a first pass. So we have a 1, a 2, and a 3. 3 passes, but this is still a bit too wet, so I will come back to that in a second. Let's do some more writing. Let's take a look at some flecks. So here I'll just write down the F for fine, but also the F for flex. I'm flexing to the max there. I was just going to say, you see how nice of an ink flow this ink has, and then it started to railroad. But, you know, with a flex pen, this is what happens. You are, of course, using up a huge amount of ink here, so it's very difficult for the feed to keep up. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a volume of curious and quaint long-forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. Well, suddenly I had a bit of the Raven. I don't think I quoted that entirely properly, but sometimes random poetry just pops up in my head. I don't know why. Maybe it had something to do with Twilight. Fine, although actually more flex than fine. This would be fine, these little dash things I'm doing. Okay, well, let's have a look at medium. This is a harder nib, and you see that the shading is much less pronounced here. That's not to say it's a bad nib, it's just a little harder. And you see a lot less shading than with the flex nib, right? Because this is really, I think, a really nice shading that goes from very light to much darker and more saturated blue. Well, here we got a bit of shading. You see a bit dark here and some lighter blue there, but still. Now, one of my favorite nibs. This is such an amazing nib. It's the Lamy Safari in broad. It is amazingly smooth. Right now I feel absolutely no resistance on the paper. It just glides across. An interesting thing I think about this ink is that you don't tend to see a whole lot of feathering. I think it behaves pretty well. Now this is nice paper. We'll do a sample later on with the standard copier paper, and then you'll probably see, I think, a bit more feathering. Okay guys, this is dry. Let's go for our second pass. Second pass! We need a song for this. Preferably by someone who can actually sing. Okay, so I'll leave that to dry, and I'll return to that later. Because first we have the italic. I didn't write down broad. Broad. Okay. Italic. You have to say that in a grave voice because this is a grave nib. What shall I do today? Okay. "'Tis the wind," I muttered. Only that, and nothing more. Italic. Right, so here we definitely see some shading, I think. You see here this very beautiful, nice, deeply saturated dark blue. I really love that. It's almost towards grey, I think, in this area. A very dark and saturated grey, not a light grey. I really love the ink. You can see that in these samples too. It's you know, okay. Another ink I love. What about this? Looks dry to me. Not really there, but the biggest part of that's dry. So here we go again for the third and final pass. Now, I mean, seriously, just look at this. Look at how this is just one pass. Look at how this goes from I won't say a very light, but a much lighter blue to something that is really moving towards black. Really dark blue. This is Twilight. I mean, look at the sky with Twilight, and this is the shade of color you'll see. You'll see this towards the horizon, and then as you go up, it just gets blacker. I absolutely love that. I think it's a fantastic shade of ink, especially in a broad nib or a nib that has some flex to it, some springiness. Really nice. Really like that. Okay, well, we have two more tests to do. First of all, waterproofness. We'll leave that to dry for a short while. And then, of course, there was this one test of someone suggested this twice to, I think, just write something, let it dry, and then pass over it with a wet brush. Now, she was quite adamant about that, and she suggested it on the Inkcyclopedia, and then she suggested it again on YouTube. And of course, she is completely right. After all, the ink... Whoa, I'm gotta be careful there. Right. The Inkcyclopedia is for you, right? So if you want to see something, you've got to tell us. And if we forget, you should tell us again. Now, I cannot guarantee we'll be able to comply with every request. For example, I will not use a 6-inch paintbrush to put the ink on my walls, for example. But, you know, basic requests, I'm sure we can work out somehow. Okay, take a look at this. Take a look at this extreme saturation. Take a look at the darkness. The pictures will show this even better than the video, I'm sure, but still, I think it looks really cool. You see that darkness in this part of the italic nib too, which is great. I love that. I'm just waiting for this stuff to dry, but let's go to a bit of a scorecard. I'll use my medium nib for that. So what do we got here? We have, as to color, well, we have a blue-grayish type of thing. When it comes to shading, well, clearly it will depend on the nib you use. How springy is it? How broad is it? But I would say that the shading on this ink is very good. Now, if you take a look at some of the other inks we've checked out in the Inkcyclopedia, here we have Lidete. You see this amazing shading here. Well, you don't really see that here, although it is very good. But I would personally say, this is a very subjective thing, I would say that Lidete shades a bit better, although this has a fantastic color overall, and it does actually shade. But, you know, when you try to, you know, classify it, I would say this is a very good. Flow. Well, once it flows, I think it's very good. I didn't have a lot of skipping with this or anything like that. I don't really recall having any Diamine ink that actually skips, but still. Feathering. I think that's good. I don't recall seeing a lot of feathering with this unless you put it in a huge nib on cheap paper, but we'll go to cheaper paper in a second. Okay, then we have the drying time. Well, I would say medium. It's not extremely fast drying, it's not insanely wet, as you can see there, but it's you know, it's doable. Waterproofness. Yeah, well, I have no idea. Let's check it. Is this dry? Oh yeah. Is this dry? So I'm not sure whether I'm doing what our Journey UK wanted me to do, but here is a brush. I don't know what kind of brush. This is one of the few brushes I own. I don't know whether this is, what do you call that? The hair of a ferret or whatever the hell people use for that. There may be some yellowish ink left on this. Well, whatever. It's just water. Ooh, I like that. Very artful. Artful. Very artful. Is that actually... Well, never mind. It's artistic. So I guess we should conclude from this that the ink does not really hold up well when you put some water to it. That's also the impression I'm getting here. It's interesting. Let's just try and get rid of some of that water. A bit of tissue. Wow, that's impressive. That's just gone. Gone. A woody kind of word. That makes no sense to you? Look it up. Woody kind of words on YouTube. The ink is gone. Waterproofness, none. Because clearly there is a bit left, but that's not really that impressive. And you see it here too. It just runs like there's no tomorrow. Run, baby, run! Okay. Run! They're shooting at you, come on! Ah. Here we go. I think we need some cheap paper. I'll try to get rid of that. Let's see if we can get this stuff to feather or something. What do we got here? We got some paper. This is cheap copier paper. So let's go with the nibs. Where's my nice plastic thing that I used to put here so that I wipe out the ink? Oh, it's just gone. What's going on? Oh, here we go. Sorry about that, I'm getting old. I start to forget stuff. Alright, a fine nib. The quick brown fox jumps over. The lazy dog. Fine. Okay. Medium. I'm sorry about shoving this around a bit, but it's not attached to a notepad, so it moves a bit. My apologies. The quick brown fox. Jumps over. Me sainted father. Sorry, Eric. Had to do this. For Eric. Then we have a broad nib. You know, the fun of the broad nib is that it's broad, you know. The quick brown fox jumps over. the lazy dog, you know. It's not a lot of people who know that, but it does. Italic. Nibs. The quick brown fox jumps over the quite lazy dog, you see. You see. Okay, well, interestingly enough, what I do not see is the feathering I was expecting. Which is actually a good sign, of course. I mean, here we have some pretty broad nibs. I'm just seeing whether I can make this work out. I don't see any feathering. This is not that easy to make this focus and align this, but I really don't see any feathering. So you just check out the high resolution stills by yourself, and I'm sure you'll find that this is a pretty feather resistant ink, even on this cheap paper. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Maybe just for fun, let's go for some really broad nibbage. Then I can really show you whether it feathers or not. Oh yes, and maybe some flecks. Let's go for some flecks right now. That's right. Flex it, baby. No, don't stop. Thank you. Screaming in terror always works. Sometimes. Not always. What you doing here, boy? You will write when I tell you to write. There we go. Now here we got the feathering I was so desperately looking for. So if you put, it now says I don't know what language this is. This is a really big T. You didn't notice that mistake, did you? You see feathering there. Oh yeah, it feathers. It feathers like crazy. But of course, don't forget, this is cheap paper, and I'm putting down a sick amount of ink on this paper. If you take a look at this broad nib, you see that this is not an issue at all. And yes, I did write a bit quickly there, but even when I do this more slowly, you see that there really isn't that much more feathering. You see it a little bit in some of the spots, but this is a really broad nib, and look, there we get it. There we get it. Now we got the feathering. You see how ecstatic I get when I see this feathering, because that was what I was trying to show you. So, okay. There is feathering. With a very broad nib on cheaper paper, there is feathering. Just so you know. But now I was going to do something with a really broad nib. I'm just moving a bit here. You know, the reason I sometimes make these strange noises is that there is a tripod lag here in this corner, one in that corner, and I have to move my arms around that. So if I groan or make weird squeaky noises, then you know exactly why that is. Well, here we go. What do we got? Notice how my angle was not steep enough there. It happens. I'm Barney and I'm a geek. But it's really true. There we go, people. And while we're at it, let's do some more of this. I like where this is going. So there you have it. Diamine Twilight Blue, one of my favorite dark blues. I think it's great. I think the shading is fantastic. We have finally shown that it can feather, but it takes quite a bit of trouble to do that. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this is a fantastic ink. Great flow, great color, great shade. Get it? Now, I would say. This is what it looks like. You know you need this, so get it. I hope this was useful. Any further comments or requests or stuff or tests you'd like to see us do? You'd like to see us fire a 45 ACP round at the writing just to see how well it holds up? You just let us know. You would like to see us dip this in acetic acid to see whether the ink holds up, or you just let us know. You want to see us use a samurai sword to cut it up. You let us know. I don't think we'll do any of these things, but you can always let us know if you have other requests about stuff you'd like to see. Notice the feathering there, by the way. I just saw that just now. You know, any tests, more water, different types of stuff with things we do stuff with. That's a pretty nice description, I think. Let us know. So, that's it. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later.